Imagine walking through a city where the sidewalks generate electricity with every step, where cracks in the concrete seal themselves overnight, like a wound healing on human skin, where the roads talk directly to the cars driving on them, and where an exact digital copy of the entire city exists inside a computer, running thousands of simulations before a single brick is laid. It sounds like science fiction. It isn't. Most of what I'm about to show you already exists, right now, in real cities on real streets. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at a sidewalk the same way again. Here's the problem nobody talks about. By 2050, roughly 7 out of every 10 people on Earth will live in a city. That's not a distant prediction, it's a countdown that's already running. And the cities we have today, the ones built for the 20th century, are starting to buckle under that weight. Traffic that doesn't move. Pipes that leak more water than they deliver. Buildings that guzzle energy instead of making it. So somewhere between Silicon Valley labs, European research universities, and construction sites in the Middle East, engineers have been quietly building the replacement. Not one single breakthrough, 10 of them, working together, stitched into the concrete, the pavement, and the power grid of the modern city. Today we're going to walk through all 10. And for each one, I'll tell you exactly where it stands. Already working in the real world, still being tested, or coming in the years ahead. No hype. No science fiction. Just what's actually happening beneath your feet. Let's start with the one you might literally be standing on right now. There's a stretch of pavement just off Oxford Street in London where every footstep gets converted into electricity. Underneath the tiles sit small generators that flex slightly under your weight, and that tiny mechanical motion becomes usable power, enough to light street lamps, play ambient sound, or charge a phone. The company behind it, PaveGen, has installed similar systems in Washington, D.C., at Heathrow Airport, and even on dance floors at music festivals, where a crowd jumping to a beat once generated over 90,000 joules of energy in a single show. One single footstep produces almost nothing on its own. Physics doesn't bend that easily, but multiply that by millions of commuters a day, and you start to see why cities are paying attention. It's not going to replace the power grid, but it's already real, already installed, and already turning something as ordinary as walking into a tiny act of energy generation. And if a sidewalk can generate power, what about the concrete underneath it, the part we never even think about? Picture a bridge that develops a hairline crack. Normally, that's the beginning of a very expensive problem. Water seeps in, steel reinforcement rusts, and eventually a crew has to show up with jackhammers. But researchers have found a strange workaround. Bacteria. Specific strains, usually from the Bacillus family, get mixed directly into the concrete before it's poured. They can survive for years in a dry, dormant state, essentially sleeping inside the wall. The moment a crack forms and water gets in, the bacteria wake up, feed on nutrients embedded in the mix, and excrete limestone as a byproduct. That limestone fills the crack from the inside out, like a scab closing a wound. Some bacteria-based healing agents are already being used commercially in select infrastructure projects, and market analysts expect the technology to move from niche use to mainstream construction over the next several years. It's not on every sidewalk yet, it's more expensive to produce, and there are still open questions about how many times a section can heal before it runs out of fuel. But for tunnels, bridges, and structures where repairs are a nightmare, that extra cost is starting to look like a bargain. Self-repairing concrete is one thing. But what happens above the concrete, in the flow of traffic itself, might already be reshaping your daily commute more than you realize. Traditional traffic lights run on fixed timers, built for a version of the city that stopped existing decades ago. AI traffic systems throw that model out. Instead, cameras and sensors feed real-time data into algorithms that adjust signal timing on the fly, city block by city block, based on what's actually happening on the road right now. Pittsburgh was one of the earliest test cases, using adaptive AI signals that cut commute times and reduced idling at intersections. Since then, versions of this technology have spread to cities across the world, quietly rerouting green lights around accidents, rush hour surges, even emergency vehicles trying to cut through gridlock. The bigger story here isn't just shorter commutes. It's a shift in how cities are managed, from fixed infrastructure that reacts slowly to living systems that adjust every few seconds. And if the roads can think, what about the buildings lining them? In Milan, there's a pair of residential towers covered edge to edge in real trees. Over 800 of them, along with thousands of shrubs and plants, planted directly into balconies that wrap around every floor. It's called Bosco Verticale, the vertical forest, and it isn't a concept render. People live there. The trees do real work. They absorb carbon dioxide, filter particulate pollution out of the air, and create a natural buffer that keeps interior temperatures more stable, cutting down on air conditioning. Since Milan's project opened, similar vertical forests have been built or are under construction in cities across China, the Netherlands, and beyond, a small but growing category of architecture that treats greenery not as decoration, but as infrastructure. It's a beautiful idea. But green buildings solve pollution at the source. What about the deliveries constantly moving between them? This is where things start to feel closer to science fiction, even though parts of it are already live. Companies like Zipline have been flying medical supplies over parts of Africa for years, and drone delivery has expanded into limited residential trials in the United States, with Amazon and Walmart both running active programs in select cities. In parts of China, food delivery drones already drop off orders from rooftop launch pads. What doesn't fully exist yet is the corridor, a citywide, regulated airspace grid where thousands of drones fly predictable routes without colliding, without falling out of the sky over playgrounds, without turning the skyline into aerial chaos. That requires air traffic control for drones, something regulators in the US, Europe, and China are actively building right now, piece by piece. So, real deliveries, real drones, but the fully connected corridor system is still being assembled. And once packages start moving through the sky, the next logical question is, what happens to the people? Robot taxis are no longer a demo. In select US cities, driverless vehicles are already carrying paying passengers through real traffic, no human behind the wheel. Autonomous shuttles, smaller, slower, following fixed routes, have been piloted in university campuses, airports, and city districts on multiple continents. Full-scale autonomous public buses, the kind that could replace an entire city's transit fleet, are still mostly in testing. The technology has to prove itself in mixed traffic, in snow, in unpredictable pedestrian behavior, before regulators sign off at scale. But the direction is unmistakable. Cities from Singapore to Phoenix are treating driverless transit not as a novelty, but as the next phase of public infrastructure. And to coordinate all of this, the traffic lights, the drones, the buses, cities needed something bigger. A way to test the entire system before touching a single real street. A digital twin is exactly what it sounds like, a complete virtual replica of a real city, built from sensor data, satellite imagery, and 3D modeling, updated in near real time. Singapore built one of the most advanced examples in the world, called Virtual Singapore, letting planners simulate flooding, sunlight exposure, even how a new skyscraper would change wind patterns at street level, all before construction begins. Shanghai and several other major cities have built similar systems to model traffic, energy use, and emergency response. This isn't a video game. It's a planning tool that lets a city rehearse its own future, testing a new subway line, a heat wave, or a power outage in simulation, long before it happens in reality. Which raises an obvious question. If a city can simulate everything above ground, can it manage what's happening underneath it too? How it actually works. A smart water network isn't a single technology, it's a three-layer stack working together. 1. Distributed IoT sensing, pressure, flow, and water quality sensors installed along pipelines, often battery-powered or running on low-energy protocols like LoRaWAN, transmitting continuous data instead of the manual quarterly readings of the past. 2. Acoustic leak detection. One of the most effective techniques uses hydrophones, acoustic sensors clamped onto fire hydrants that listen for the distinctive sound of a hidden underground leak. Compared to accelerometers or ground microphones, hydrophones tend to deliver equal or higher accuracy because they're less sensitive to ambient noise and can pick up leaks even at low frequencies, thanks to their ability to capture high-resolution data even under strong signal attenuation. 3. AI models. The acoustic and pressure data gets processed by machine learning algorithms that pinpoint the leak's location and separate it from background noise. A systematic review of 53 studies published between 2018 and 2025 found that SVM models reach 94 to 100% accuracy, staying stable even with noisy data and at low computational cost. while convolutional neural networks perform best at multi-class classification and localization, typically in the 95 to 99% accuracy range. Who's already doing this? This isn't lab theory. In early 2025, a major North American water utility signed a contract with Itron to install over 500,000 smart water meters with two-way communication and built-in leak alerts, one of the largest AMI, advanced metering infrastructure, rollouts ever carried out in the water sector, with full commissioning planned across multiple phases over the following year. Around the same time, Xylem expanded its EYDRO analytics platform with AI-driven leak correlation and automated pressure management modules, built specifically for large municipal networks with high non-revenue water ratios, offering automated benchmarking across district metering areas and integration with existing SCADA infrastructure. The economic impact. The problem this technology solves is enormous and almost invisible. Aging urban water networks lose between 15% and 30% of the water pumped into them before it ever reaches a tap. Utilities that have adopted IoT monitoring have reported leak detection improvements that cut non-revenue water losses by up to 30%, translating into significant cost savings. It's no surprise the global smart water management market, valued at $21.5 billion in 2025, is projected to grow to $47.2 billion by 2034, at a compound annual growth rate of 8.87% over 2026-2034, the real limitation. The challenge isn't the technology, it's the infrastructure underneath it. Many cities are running water networks that are 50 to 100 years old, often without accurate records of their layout, and integrating modern sensors with legacy SCADA systems requires significant upfront investment before the savings materialize. That's why adoption, while real and already at scale in cities like London and Singapore, remains uneven globally. The starting problem. The baseline numbers explain why this technology is attracting serious investment. Today, 70% of global waste still ends up in landfills, and only 19% gets recycled, with the cost of poor waste management estimated at around $640 billion a year globally, while waste generation is projected to reach 4.54 billion tons by 2050. In the United States specifically, historically only a fraction of recyclable materials actually gets recovered, around 43% of aluminum cans, 31% of glass, and just 5% of plastic, figures that have stayed largely flat for over a decade. What already exists, for real? Here the line between already exists and still a pilot matters a lot, because the industry is moving on two separate tracks. On sorting, the technology is already commercial and operational. Companies like Robotics have built robotic arms with computer vision that identify and separate recyclables directly from mixed waste streams, not just material pre-sorted by households, but straight, unsorted garbage. The company's founder has described this shift as a recent breakthrough, made possible by a combination of technical advances and continuous fine-tuning that, over the past 2 years, finally unlocked the ability to sort directly from unsorted trash. Today, the company serves more than 100 clients running over 400 of its AI systems, deployed across North America, Asia, and Europe. In 2026, it's opening a fully automated facility in Commerce City, Colorado, capable of processing 62,000 tons of recyclable material a year. A similar case comes from Pennsylvania, where the company Glacier partnered with Waste Connections to move its AI-powered sorting robots from pilot testing toward broader industrial adoption, with the robots working alongside human staff to process large waste volumes while reducing contamination levels. In terms of speed, the best robotic sorting systems available today reach up to 80 picks per minute, a pace comparable to human sorters. On street-level collection, though, the technology stays more experimental. Volvo has tested a self-driving refuse truck in Sweden that uses LiDAR for obstacle detection along pre-programmed routes, optimizing gear shifts and steering to cut emissions. At CES 2026, Oshkosh unveiled HAR-E, an autonomous electric robot designed for on-demand collection. Residents can summon it through an app, much like calling a rideshare, and the robot handles transporting waste to centralized collection points. The German startup Angsa Robotics has built a separate autonomous robot for parks and large events, with an 8-hour battery life, dedicated to picking up scattered small litter. The real bottleneck. The limitation here isn't the robot's ability to recognize and grab an object. AI already does that well. The problem is economic, further down the chain. As one professor who studies circular economies has pointed out, recycling only works if someone is willing to buy the sorted, consolidated material afterward. If there's no money to be made from the recovered material, the whole system simply doesn't hold up. That's exactly why much of the industry is still taking its first steps toward full automation. The sorting technology is ready, but its rollout at city scale still depends on the stability of recycled material markets. Why it stays and not. Robotic sorting at material recovery facilities, MRFs, is now a well-established commercial reality across dozens of facilities in North America, Asia, and Europe. On that specific front, it's arguably mature technology. But fully autonomous, door-to-door street collection at city scale is still in the pilot phase. No city in the world has yet replaced its garbage truck fleet with fully autonomous vehicles. It's this combination, mature sorting, still experimental collection, that justifies classifying the technology overall as in development. In Texas, an entire neighborhood of homes was built using giant 3D printers that extrude layers of concrete directly into walls, following a digital blueprint, with almost no manual bricklaying involved. It's not a prototype. Families are already living in these houses. Habitat for Humanity has used similar printing technology to build affordable homes faster and cheaper than traditional construction allows. Right now, this is mostly limited to single-story or low-rise buildings, and multi-story 3D printed towers are still more experimental. But construction costs keep dropping, print speeds keep increasing, and several companies are actively working toward printing entire multi-unit apartment blocks within the next few years. If it scales the way its developers predict, it could fundamentally change how fast and how cheaply a city can grow. Here's the thing that ties all 10 of these together, and it's easy to miss if you look at them one at a time. None of them are really about the technology. A sidewalk that generates power, a bridge that heals its own cracks, a traffic light that thinks. Individually, they're clever engineering. But stacked together, they describe something different. A city that behaves less like a machine we built once and maintain forever, and more like a living organism that senses, adapts, and repairs itself. We spent the last century building cities that were rigid. Fixed grids, fixed timers, fixed materials that only ever degraded. The next generation of cities won't be fixed at all. They'll be closer to something alive. And maybe that's the real shift nobody's prepared for. Not flying cars. Not robots on every corner. Just a city that quietly starts taking care of itself. One footstep, one heartbeat of electricity, one healed crack at a time. So here's a question worth sitting with. If the city around you started repairing itself, sensing you, adapting to you, would you even notice? Or would it just start to feel normal, the way every impossible technology eventually does? Tell me which of these 10 surprised you the most. I'll be reading through the comments. And if you want to keep exploring where technology is quietly rebuilding the world around us, there's more of that waiting for you right here.